What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my first impressions of Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Now, the Dark Arisen version is, I believe, a version that was released on Steam that includes all the DLC, etc. that was included with the original release. But Dragon's Dogma was a title that was very much so requested. A lot of people mentioned it, said it would be right up my alley, that type of thing, so I was excited to dive into this thing and see what was what. And for the most part, I think people were absolutely correct about that. And in a recent video, I referred to it as looking like sort of Dragon Age meets Dark Souls, and for the most part I would say that's a fairly accurate description. There's a lot of elements from a few other games in there as well, but overall it's got that really dark and gritty atmosphere combined with weightier combat that so far is proving really fun. And I would say the combat does seem to be a pretty big focus of the game, and while it's my understanding there are multiple endings, which implies some choices later on, currently I haven't really gotten that far and it's been a bit on rails. But the combat is honestly something else. There's a lot of weight to it. There's a sort of grapple mechanic, and for larger enemies, this will actually let you climb up them and attack while you're on them, which will let you do things like attack specific points on their body, and this is especially interesting when you're fighting very large enemies, which in and of itself is pretty cool, but then the customizations that go into your character and building them also kind of lean into that a bit. So what I mean is there are your character levels, and then there's your vocation. Your vocation is like your class, but it's kind of separate from your character level. As you play the game and level up, all of your attributes increase. Your vocation kind of dictates what you're actually good at, and you level up vocations. And it's my understanding there's more later, but I haven't gotten that far yet. But as you level up your vocations, you'll earn discipline, and then you can spend that discipline on skills for your class, which then allow you to do things like dictate how you're attacking, etc. And overall, just a very interesting system. You can also purchase skills that augment your health, etc. on top of your vocation. And then there's the equipment system, which will see you actually having a few layers, if you will. There's a clothing slot versus an armor slot for your torso and your legs, which, while not exactly groundbreaking, is a feature I always like to see, as I think it adds that little extra depth to just the customization of your character in general. And then another thing that stood out to me I wanted to talk about in this video was the pawn system. So rather than companions, in this game you have pawns. So your character is an Arisen, which means that a sort of slightly different species, but still basically humans, just kind of answer to you unquestioningly. They seem to be from a different universe altogether, according to the game, but basically they serve as companions, and you get what is called a main pawn once you get so far into the story, which is basically a pawn that you actually customize and create similar to character creation, which on its face is pretty cool. You can kind of customize their vocation to kind of accent whatever you're doing, which will help you out in combat, of course. But what I thought was really cool is in the online portion of this game, other characters can hire your pawn. And in doing so, they can take your pawn on quests, etc., which will then give that pawn knowledge of what you're doing. So when you get to those quests, your pawn might have relevant information to tell you about it, which overall I thought was a really cool mechanic. And then kind of the last thing I want to leave you guys with for the first impressions video is, much like a lot of Dark Souls games, the story is a bit convoluted here at the beginning. I understand there's some sort of cycle that seems to be happening, but the game gives you very little information about it. There's a big evil dragon doing evil dragon stuff. He rips your heart out at the beginning of the game, which somehow you live through, and your main goal seems to be to get it back. And while admittedly pretty interesting, main story-wise, I'm not really sure where this is going just yet, but excited to see where it does go, because as I mentioned, the exploration and the combat are very good, actually, especially the combat. I think a lot of games that use third-person action could really take some cues from this game and how to handle combat, because it feels really good to play. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, and so far, it's been the thing I've enjoyed the most about it. And looking forward to the full review, I'm hoping that some more choices open up, because again, so far it's been pretty on rails, but that's really my only complaint so far, because beyond that, it has been a blast, really, and I'm excited to play through this 100% and then bring you guys that review. There's my first impressions. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.